I was standing barefoot in my kitchen with a crowbar in one hand when a narrow steel box slid out from behind the bottom panel of my wife's pantry cabinet and struck the tile at my feet. Inside that box were three things I had never seen before: a key card for a storage facility across town, a recent appraisal for land my father had left me 32 years earlier, and a typed checklist with a sentence near the bottom that made my hands go cold. Keep him focused on taxes. Call it routine housekeeping. Get signature before Friday. My name was printed directly underneath. I was 67 years old, married for 22 years, and until that morning I believed I knew exactly who I was growing old beside. 4 days later I was supposed to sign something. I just didn't know what. My name is Thomas Bell. Most people call me Tom. I live outside Knoxville, Tennessee, in a brick ranch house with 2 dogwoods out front and a back porch I built myself when my knees still worked without arguing with me. I retired 5 years ago after more than 3 decades as a fire inspector. That kind of work trains you to notice things other people overlook. A scorch mark where there shouldn't be one. A door that swings the wrong way. An overloaded extension cord hiding behind a church refrigerator. But apparently, it doesn't train you to notice when the woman sharing your home has built a secret life 3 rooms away. My wife Diane had gone to Raleigh for 6 days to visit her daughter from her first marriage. Before she left, she had stood in the pantry with her hands on her hips and complained for probably the 100th time about the old cabinets. They had been there since before either of us owned the house. Dark oak, heavy doors, one drawer that screeched every time you opened it. Diane hated them. I had heard her say more than once that she wanted something brighter before we got too old to enjoy it. So while she was gone, I decided to surprise her. Not with flowers. I've never been much good at flowers. I build things. I repair things. When I love somebody, I reach for a toolbox. That Tuesday morning, I started pulling out the lower cabinets. By 10, I had already cut my knuckle, lost one screwdriver, and discovered a collection of crumbs behind the baseboard old enough to qualify for Social Security. I was removing the toe kick beneath the tall pantry cabinet when I noticed something strange. The panel wasn't nailed in. It was held by magnets. Good magnets, too. The kind you wouldn't see unless you knew to pull from exactly the right edge. I remember thinking that was clever. I figured some carpenter had built a hidden access panel for plumbing or wiring. I slipped the crowbar behind it. The panel popped loose, and the steel box fell out. It was maybe 12 inches long and flat enough to fit between the cabinet base and the wall. There was no lock, just a sliding latch. I sat down right there on the kitchen floor. I wish I could tell you I immediately knew something was wrong. I didn't. At first I thought Diane had hidden emergency cash. Some people do that. My mother kept $400 in a flour tin for 20 years. So I opened the box expecting money. Instead, I found the storage key card, the appraisal, and the checklist. The property on the appraisal was called Bell Ridge, 117 acres in Morgan County, hardwood timber, a creek running through the west side, a small hunting cabin my father built with his own hands in 1978. My brother Randall and I had practically grown up there. When Dad died, Bell Ridge came to me. That had caused trouble between Randall and me for a while, but there was a reason. Dad had given Randall his share of the family construction company 15 years earlier. I received the land. We weren't happy about every detail, but we understood the arrangement. Or at least I thought we did. The appraisal in that box was dated 11 days earlier. Value, $1,680,000. I stared at that number for a long time. The last professional estimate I had seen was less than half of that. Then I noticed 3 words near the bottom: potential energy lease. I read the entire page again. A company had apparently expressed interest in leasing a large portion of Bell Ridge for a solar development and transmission corridor. I had never heard of the company. I had never requested the appraisal, and I had never told anyone to get one. Then I unfolded the checklist. It wasn't long, maybe 12 lines. Order updated appraisal. Confirm old POA still active. Get trust packet revised. Schedule notary. Keep him focused on taxes. Call it routine housekeeping. Get signature before Friday. After closing, notify buyer. At the bottom were 2 initials, D.B. and R.B. Diane Bell, Randall Bell, my wife, and my brother. I sat on that floor until my right leg went numb. There is a particular kind of silence that comes into a house when something you believed about your life suddenly stops being true. The refrigerator was running. A truck passed outside. Somebody's lawnmower started 2 houses over. Everything around me continued as if nothing had happened. But I could not stop looking at those initials. D. B. R. B. I picked up the storage card. A sticker on the back had a handwritten unit number. The facility name was printed across the front. Volunteer storage. About 20 minutes from my house. I almost drove there immediately. Then I stopped myself. 30 years inspecting fire scenes had taught me one useful habit. When something doesn't make sense, don't disturb more than you have to until you understand what you're looking at. So I took pictures. Every page, front and back, the box, the hidden panel, the exact position where I found it. Then I put everything on the kitchen table and called the one person I trusted who had no connection to my family. Her name was Margaret Sloan. She was 71, a retired attorney, and the widow of a man I had worked with for nearly 20 years. Margaret had handled my mother's estate. She didn't practice anymore, but she knew how to ask the right questions. She answered on the second ring. "Tom, you all right?" That question nearly broke me. I said, "Margaret, I don't know." Then I told her what I had found. She was quiet for several seconds. Finally, she said, "Do not sign anything." I wasn't planning to. "I'm serious, Tom. Nothing. Not a form at the bank, not a tax document, not a receipt somebody slides under your nose." "What does POA mean here?" "You know what it means. Power of attorney." Of course I knew. But I didn't want to say it. 7 years earlier, before I had surgery to repair an aneurysm, I had signed a durable financial power of attorney naming Diane. We had never revoked it. At the time, it made perfect sense. She was my wife. I trusted her. Margaret continued. "A power of attorney doesn't automatically mean she can do anything she wants. The actual document matters. State law matters. The transaction matters. But I need you to stop guessing and talk to someone currently practicing." "Should I call the police? Based on what you've told me?" "You don't even know yet whether anyone has committed a crime. Preserve what you found. Don't accuse anybody. Get the document reviewed." That was exactly what I needed to hear. Not drama, not panic. A next step. Margaret gave me the name of an estate attorney in Knoxville named Claire Holloway. I called her office. Her assistant said the earliest opening was Thursday. I looked back at the checklist. Get signature before Friday. "I need something sooner," I said. I hated the desperation in my own voice. The assistant must have heard it too. She asked what the matter involved. I gave her the shortest version I could. There was another pause. Then she said, "Can you be here at 8 tomorrow morning?" I said yes. That afternoon, I drove to volunteer storage. I told myself I was only going to look. That was a lie. The key card opened the security gate. That told me immediately that it was active. Unit 214 sat in the second building. I walked down the concrete hallway until I found it. The lock took the small brass key that had been taped to the card. I turned it. My stomach tightened. Inside were 6 banker boxes, 2 plastic bins, and a folding table. That was all. No secret lover. No suitcase packed for escape. Nothing cinematic. Just paperwork. And somehow that frightened me more. The first box contained copies of tax returns. The second contained records from Bell Ridge, old surveys, timber reports, my father's original purchase agreement. Documents I had believed were still in the locked cabinet in my home office. I opened the third box. That was when I understood this wasn't something Diane had started last week. There were printed emails going back more than a year. Most were between Diane and Randall. The first few were ordinary. Property taxes, insurance, repairs to the cabin. Then the tone changed. Randall. He still won't sell. Diane. He says it was his father's land. Randall. It was my father's land too. Diane. I know. Randall. If he understood the offer, he'd change his mind. Diane. No. He'd get more stubborn. I had to sit down on one of the plastic bins. There is something uniquely painful about reading how people discuss you when they believe you will never see it. Not what they say to your face. What they say after you leave the room. I kept reading. 6 months earlier, Randall. We need control before the lease numbers become public. Diane. I'm working on the estate angle. Randall. Keep it simple. Diane. Taxes and probate. He listens when I say we're making things easier. Making things easier. Diane had said those exact words to me 2 weeks earlier. We had been eating breakfast. She had placed a folder beside my coffee. Tom, we should clean up some of this estate stuff, she'd said. Nothing urgent. I just want to make things easier. I had barely looked at the folder. I told her we'd deal with it when she got home from Raleigh. She kissed me on the forehead. That's fine, she said. I remember smiling. That memory felt different now. I opened another file. There was a draft document transferring Bell Ridge into something called BR Legacy Holdings, LLC. The LLC paperwork listed Randall as manager. Another page listed Diane as an authorized member. My name appeared nowhere. Attached to it was a proposed trust amendment. I couldn't understand all the language, but I understood enough to see my signature line at the bottom, blank, waiting. Underneath was another email. Randall, Friday is the deadline if we want to stay ahead of Henderson. Diane, he'll sign Thursday night. Randall, you're sure? Diane, I'll tell him it's routine housekeeping. There it was again. Routine housekeeping. I closed the folder. For the first time since I had found the box, I felt anger. Not the loud kind. I didn't punch anything, didn't throw a chair. It was colder than that. My wife knew what words made me stop asking questions. My own brother knew it too. They weren't just making plans involving me. They were planning around me, using my habits, my trust, my age. They had studied the easiest way to move me through a decision without making me feel pushed. I left the storage unit exactly as I found it. I didn't take the boxes. I photographed what I could. Then I drove home. That night I barely slept. Around 2 in the morning, I went into the living room and turned on one lamp. There was a photograph of Diane and me on the bookshelf. Outer Banks, 9 years earlier. Her hair was blowing across her face. I was squinting into the sun. We looked happy. Maybe we were. That's the part people misunderstand about betrayal, my friend. A lie at the end doesn't automatically mean every laugh before it was fake. Sometimes the cruelest thing is not knowing which memories were real and which ones were convenient. I sat there looking at that photograph until almost sunrise. Then I noticed something else. The checklist said, confirm old POA, still active. Why would they need to confirm that if all they wanted was my signature? I didn't like that question. At 8 the next morning, I was sitting across from Claire Holloway. She was younger than I expected, maybe 45, with reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. I gave her copies of everything. She read quietly for almost 20 minutes. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Bell, I'm going to separate what we know from what we suspect. I liked her immediately for saying that. What do we know? Your wife and brother have discussed transferring your property into an LLC they control. We know they have a draft trust amendment. We know they obtained an appraisal without your involvement. We know there is a scheduled deadline. And the power of attorney? We need the original. I had a copy at home. I brought it back that afternoon. Claire reviewed it. Then she exhaled. Your wife has broad authority under this document, but self-dealing is restricted. That does not mean you should assume you're safe. It means we act carefully. Can I revoke it? Yes. Do it. She nodded. We also need to check the county records and your trust. That was where we hit our first obstacle. The trust document Claire needed was missing. Not my copy. The original. The one that should have been in my home safe. I went back that evening and opened the safe. Insurance papers. My birth certificate. Dad's death certificate. The envelope where the trust had always been was empty. For 10 seconds, I couldn't breathe. Then I remembered the storage unit, one of the boxes. I had seen an old blue binder. I drove back. The original trust wasn't there. But I found something else. A letter from a land acquisition company dated 14 months earlier. It was addressed to Randall, not me. The company was offering nearly $2 million for a long-term energy lease with an option to purchase part of Bell Ridge later. The letter thanked Randall for representing the family's interests. My brother had been negotiating over my land for more than a year. Then came the line that changed the entire story. We appreciate your renewed willingness to proceed following the expiration of the prior proposal in 2019. Prior proposal, 5 years earlier. I remembered 2019. Randall had suddenly started calling me more often that summer. He asked whether I ever thought about selling Bell Ridge. I told him no. A month later, Diane brought it up, casually. Said maintaining land at my age might become a burden. I laughed it off. Then the subject disappeared. Or so I thought. This wasn't a new plan. They hadn't recently discovered an opportunity. They had tried before. And when I refused, without even realizing there was a buyer waiting, they had stepped back. Now they were trying again. Only this time, they had prepared paperwork. I called Claire from the parking lot. They've done this before. What do you mean? I read her the letter. She went silent. Then she said, Tom, listen carefully. Don't go home and confront anyone. We're going to verify title first. Then we're going to revoke the power of attorney and notify the relevant institutions. But we do it in the right order. The next 2 days moved slowly and quickly at the same time. Claire confirmed that Bell Ridge was still titled in my name. No deed had been recorded transferring it. That was the best news I had heard all week. She prepared the revocation. She contacted the appropriate offices. We made certified copies. I changed the lock on the home safe. I moved important originals to a secure location. And then I did the hardest thing. I finished the pantry. Not because I cared about cabinets anymore, because Diane was coming home Saturday. If she walked in and saw the kitchen torn apart, she would know something had changed. So I worked until nearly midnight Friday. New white cabinets, new hardware, fresh paint. The hidden steel box, I put it back. Empty. Exactly where it had been. Saturday afternoon, Diane pulled into the driveway. I watched from the kitchen window. She stepped out carrying a little shopping bag and her overnight case. Same woman I had kissed goodbye 6 days earlier. Same walk, same sunglasses. Same way of closing the car door with her hip. I opened the front door before she reached it. Welcome home. She smiled. Miss me? House was too quiet. That wasn't entirely a lie. She kissed me. Then she saw the kitchen. Her face lit up. Oh my God, Tom. For a moment, she looked genuinely happy. She ran her hand across one of the new cabinet doors. You did all this? Surprise. She hugged me. I stood there, with my arms around the woman who had apparently been planning to take control of the most valuable thing my father ever left me. And I hugged her back. That night we ate takeout because I was too tired to cook. Diane told me about Raleigh, her daughter's new job, traffic, a restaurant they tried. I listened. Then, almost exactly when I expected it, she put down her fork. Oh, by the way, 3 harmless words. I talked to Randall while I was away. I took a drink of water. How's he doing? Fine. He's been thinking about the estate stuff we talked about. There it was. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Different folder. Same purpose. I know you're tired of paperwork, she said, but this really is just routine housekeeping. I looked at her. For the first time in 22 years, I heard the sentence the way she had written it for herself. A line. A tool. Something designed to make me stop thinking. I smiled. What's the rush? Her expression barely changed. But I saw it. A pause. Maybe half a second. There's no rush. Another lie. I just think we should get organized. When? Thursday would be good. Randall can come by. We sign a few things. Done. Thursday? She nodded. Easy. Thursday. The checklist had said before Friday. I leaned back. All right. Her shoulders relaxed. Really? Sure. If it's just housekeeping. She smiled. Exactly. I slept beside her that night. Not much. But I stayed in bed. Around 3 in the morning, she rolled toward me in her sleep and rested one hand against my shoulder. For 22 years, that had been comforting. That night, it felt like evidence from another life. Thursday came. By then, Claire had completed the revocation of the power of attorney and documented every step she believed necessary. She also gave me one piece of advice. Do not pretend to understand anything you don't understand. So I asked her to come to my house. Not hide in another room. Not burst in dramatically. Just come. Diane believed Claire was there to help review the estate documents. That part was true. Randall arrived at 6:30 carrying a leather portfolio. I hadn't seen my brother in 3 months. He hugged me at the door. Tommy. Only Randall still called me that. I almost couldn't stand it. We sat around the dining table. Diane beside me. Randall across from us. Claire at the end. Randall looked at her. And you're? My attorney, I said. The room changed. Not much. Just enough. Diane looked at me. Since when do you have an attorney? Since Wednesday. Randall gave a small laugh. Tom, this isn't some big legal situation. I looked at him. No? He opened the portfolio. Nobody's saying that. We're just trying to simplify things. He pulled out several pages. I recognized the trust amendment from the storage unit. Not similar. The same. Same paragraph spacing. Same page numbers. Same blank line waiting for my name. Diane touched my arm. See? Routine housekeeping. I reached down beside my chair and placed the steel box on the table. No one spoke. Diane's hand left my arm. Randall stared at the box. I slid it toward the center. I found this Tuesday. Diane's face went pale. Not dramatic. Not movie pale. Just enough that I noticed the blood leave her cheeks. Randall looked at her. She looked at him. Neither looked at me. I took out the checklist. I unfolded it, smoothed it flat. Keep him focused on taxes, I read. Call it routine housekeeping. Then I looked at my wife. You said it exactly the way you wrote it. Diane opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Randall spoke first. Tom, you don't understand. I've heard that a lot this week. This isn't what you think. Then tell me what it is. He leaned forward. That land should never have gone entirely to you. There it was. 32 years of resentment in one sentence. Dad gave you the company. The company failed. 10 years after he gave it to you. It doesn't matter. It mattered to him. Randall slapped one hand on the table. You got the asset that appreciated. I got the risk. Diane whispered. Randall? He ignored her. You were sitting on nearly $2 million and wouldn't even discuss it. I looked at him. You never told me there was an offer, because you would have said no. That was my answer to give. Silence. Then I turned to Diane. And you? She stared at the checklist. You don't understand what it's like living with someone who refuses to plan. Then you talk to him. I tried. No, you managed me. Her eyes filled with tears. For one dangerous second, my old instincts woke up. The husband instincts. Comfort her. Lower your voice. Fix the pain in the room. Then I remembered the emails. He'll sign Thursday night. Routine housekeeping. I kept my hands on the table. Diane said, I was trying to protect us. By putting my father's land into an LLC controlled by you and Randall? She looked at Claire, then back at me. We would have all benefited. Why wasn't my name on it? She didn't answer. That was the answer. Randall stood. This is ridiculous. Claire spoke for the first time in several minutes. Mr. Bell, you are free to leave. He looked at her. I'm not talking to you. That's fine. But Mr. Bell will not be signing these documents tonight. Randall turned to me. Tom, don't do this. I almost laughed. Don't do what? Turn family against family. I looked at my brother for a long time. Then I said, I didn't. He gathered his papers. Diane watched him. He didn't look at her once. That told me more than anything else had. Whatever partnership they had built, it lasted exactly as long as they believed they were winning. At the door, Randall stopped. You really think Dad would have wanted this? I stood. No. I think Dad would have wanted us to talk like brothers before you spent a year trying to get around me. He left. The front door closed. Then it was just Diane, Claire, and me. Diane sat at the table with both hands around a glass of water she hadn't touched. What happens now? She asked. I had spent all week imagining that question. In my head, I had a dozen powerful answers. None of them felt right anymore. So I told the truth. I don't know. She nodded. I continued. But I know what doesn't happen. I don't sign anything. I don't understand. You don't handle my property in secret. And nobody uses an old power of attorney to make decisions I never approved. Her head came up. You revoked it. Yes. She closed her eyes. I watched the realization settle over her. The plan wasn't delayed. It was over. At least the part that depended on my ignorance. Claire gathered her papers and left us alone. Diane and I sat across from each other for nearly an hour. There was no screaming, no broken dishes. No dramatic confession that made everything simple. Real betrayal is rarely that generous. She admitted she had contacted Randall again the year before. She admitted they had arranged the appraisal. She admitted she believed I would never agree to sell if I knew Randall would profit from it. So instead of convincing me, they decided to make the decision feel like something else: estate planning, taxes, housekeeping. She kept saying she had never intended to leave me with nothing. Maybe that was true. Maybe in her mind, taking control without telling me wasn't stealing because she planned to stay married. That's a dangerous thing about people, my friend. We can justify almost anything if we rename it first. Control becomes help, deception becomes protection, secrecy becomes simplification. I told Diane I needed space. She stayed with her daughter for several weeks. Eventually, we began counseling. I won't give you a neat ending because life doesn't always give one. We're still married as I tell this. But we are not the same couple we were before that pantry came apart. Maybe that's honest. Some things can be repaired. Some things can only be rebuilt. Belridge is still mine. I had the property independently appraised. The energy offer was real. The value was real. And for the first time, I actually considered it. Not because Randall wanted me to. Not because Diane wanted me to. Because once I had the facts, I was allowed to make my own decision. I ended up rejecting the sale, but I negotiated a much smaller lease on 20 acres that doesn't touch the cabin or the creek. The income now helps maintain the land. I also changed my estate plan, not to punish anyone, to make it clear. That is something I should have done years ago. And Randall? We haven't spoken much. He sent me one letter. 3 pages. Half apology. Half explanation. I read it twice and put it in a drawer. Maybe one day I'll answer. Maybe I won't. The strangest part of all this is that I still finish the pantry. Every morning I walk past those white cabinets Diane once wanted so badly. Most days, they're just cabinets. But sometimes I look at that bottom panel and remember how close the truth was. Not buried in some distant office. Not hidden behind a password in another state. 6 feet from where I ate breakfast every morning. And I think about how easily trust can become habit. Habit can become blindness. And blindness can become permission for somebody else to decide what you deserve to know. So let me tell you something. Husband to husband, wife to wife, brother to brother, friend to friend. Trust the people you love. A life without trust is miserable. But know your own life. Know whose name is on your home. Know where your important documents are. Know what powers you've signed away and whether they still make sense. Know what accounts exist. Know what major decisions are being made in your name. That isn't suspicion. That's adulthood. And if somebody you love wants you to sign something, asking questions is not betrayal. You are allowed to understand your own future. The people who truly love you will not be threatened by your questions. They will answer them. And if something feels wrong, don't explode just to prove you're strong. Slow down, preserve what you know, get qualified help. Separate facts from fear. Because sometimes the smartest thing a person can do after discovering a betrayal is refuse to let anger make the next decision. I was 67 years old before I learned that lesson. I thought being a good husband meant trusting completely. Now, I think being a good partner means something harder. Trusting each other enough to remain transparent. So tell me, my friend. Comment 1, if you think I was right to stay quiet until I understood what Diane and Randall were planning. Comment 2, if you think I should have confronted them the moment I found that box. And if you've ever discovered something in your own home that changed the way you saw someone you loved, you can write 3. You don't have to tell the whole story. Sometimes just knowing somebody else has lived through that kind of moment is enough. And wherever you're listening from tonight, your kitchen, your truck, your porch, your bedroom, I hope there's one thing you remember from mine. The truth doesn't always announce itself with a slammed door. Sometimes it waits quietly behind something you've walked past 1,000 times. And sometimes all it takes to find it is deciding for once to look behind the panel. Trust grows stronger when love and clarity live side by side. Asking questions, understanding shared decisions, and protecting what matters do not weaken a family. They help keep it honest. When trust is shaken, slow down, seek wise help, and choose calm over anger. Even difficult truths can become a doorway to healthier relationships, wiser choices, and a more peaceful tomorrow. Please note, this story was created and fictionalized by AI for entertainment, while also sharing a positive life lesson about trust, transparency, and resilience.